Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon, and today we're in sticking. So grab your popcorn, grab your drink, grab your pills, and get ready. We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode. Welcome back. Now, last week I spoke briefly in one of my pieces on the drones and wondering why we couldn't get the costing of the drone show, because they gave us the steelwork on the carronage, the lights, the fireworks. Why couldn't we get the costing for the drone show, the answer to the costing of the drone show? Folks, this one floored me. And not in the way you might think. Not in the way you might think. I have an update on the drone show. And no, it's not what we've been thinking all along. The thing is, we were led to believe that the drone show was tremendously expensive. So much so that the cost was hidden from us. And the more we talk about it, it's the quieter they get. So it's like, whoa. I mean, there even was a figure branded about. I've heard of 1.5 million. But it was always spoken of as being $1 million plus EC dollars, right? No one dispelled the rumor. So we're going along with it. Whoa, the drone show cost us $1 million plus, right? Guess what? Monies spent on the drone show was not even close to 1.5 million. Now, somewhere in the world, somebody was looking at Simon Says outside of Grenada and sent me messages. So, of course, you have to you get the messages, and Simon Says does her investigative journalism, right? The company Sky Elements out of Texas, USA, they supplied 500 drones. The technician, Philip, who operated the show, they brought 500 drones to Grenada at a cost of $150,000 USD plus shipping, right? So the government absorbed the clearing cost, of course, and the government refused to pay for editing or anything extra like sound, right? They refused. They didn't want to incur that cost. The total cost of the drone show, and that is being generous, did not cost more than $175,000 USD. Y'all hearing me? It did not cost more than $175,000 USD. That's equivalent to $467,250. We could round it off at $470,000. I can't even round it off at $500,000 because that would be a lot more, right? So we're going to round it off at 470,000 EC dollars. Subtract that from 1.5 million, and that gives us about $1,030,000 $30,000, right? If we subtract $470,000 from 1.5 million, that was rumored, and that all of us believing that it was in that vicinity, a million to 1.5. We have $1,030,000 change. Remember that on the rumor that's on the rumor that the drone show was $1.5 million. The question is, why the big secret of the cost of the drone show? You would think that it wasn't that expensive and that they would be happy to tell us that they did not spend a whole heap of money on the drone show. But they let us believe that the drone show was exorbitantly priced, right? And the reason why they're keeping it a secret is that they really don't want people to know how much it really cost. I understood from someone who tried to get the information on how much a drone show cost, because there was an event hosted here that they were in charge of and wanted to see if they can use some sort of drone display. And they were told, girl, can't tell you now. They're afraid to say how much it cost. And that was coming from, that question was asked through the secretariat. And that was the reason. They never was told the cost. They were just told, leave that alone. In other words, you cannot afford that. You all cannot afford that because it is that expensive. Right? And that's a fact. I know that the conversation was held. So we are all going down the road believing that the drone show was very expensive. Big secret from the people. Why is the question? The question is why? And the answer is in an effort to deceive us. And if we all believe the drone show was $1 million, I ain't even saying 1.5. If we all believe the drone show was $1 million and it's only 500,000, then there's another 500,000, right? And so that can easily be slipped under the table because that's what we expected. So you understand? It's like telling us the Heroes Park is going to pick up most of the cost, most of the monies of that $22.5 million. And there's no Heroes Park. There's no Heroes Park. But we come into Heroes Park. The creative director of the National Celebrations Committee told someone close to me, knowing that it will get to me, that the bulk of the monies, that is the 22.5 million, will be spent on the Heroes Park project, which was supposed to be set up on the Rivera property on Grandins Beach. That is the property between Camahon Park and the Radisson property, right? To date, absolutely nothing was done on that property. Nothing was done. And instead, we have the Minister of Culture saying to us, the last thing we heard from them concerning Heroes Park was that Heroes Park can be anywhere. Let's hear it.
So that is in motion. And another important point is the whole issue of establishing a Heroes Park. We have already identified the land. It can be changed if through consultation people think that the best place may not be Camahon Park in St. George. It might be some place in Lipos Hill in St. Patrick. Then we can have that discussion. But come 2026, we will be turning the sword for to establish, come 2025, sorry, we'll be turning the sword for the establishment of a heroes pack, where we can decide whether we putting up plaques, whether we're putting up walls, whatever monument we'll be using. Come 2025, we'll definitely be having that.
So Heroes Park could be on Leapers Hill, it could be on the Rock, it could be anywhere, according to the minister. No, they're starting to lead us down a different path. So they start to talk all kind of nonsense when it comes to Heroes Park, right? Because there's no Heroes Park, and of course, we didn't even have a hero named yet. In that same interview, if you listen to the minister, he was speaking about the day, October 19, being solemn. Heroes Day, you know, being solemn, because that is the day so many people died, and so they stop people from fetting, so to speak, on that day. No drinking of alcohol, no loud, no amplified music, no fetting taking place from the night, I guess from midnight on the 19th to come right throughout the day. They take our Heroes Day that they gave us and make it a solemn day. Heroes are supposed to be celebrated. So our independence is supposed to be celebrated. That too, they've turned into a solemn day. No fetting. No fetting. And we have to be sitting here and taking this from these people. The minister for MIT and the MP for the South prepared the space some months ago, cleared the space, that the Rivera space on the beach. If you look on the screen, nicely cleared. And his caption read, "Plans are on the way." Well, he said on the way, UNDE, on the way. So let me read as he has it. Plans are on the way to develop, because he's a bright boy, to develop Rivera into our own Heroes Park. However, in the interim, don't know how long this interim is going to be, we can create some business opportunities for our people. Stay tuned. So that interim seems like it's going to be a very long one. Because if you put in business people, I guess small business owners there, you can't put them there to this month and take them out next month. So we expect that the interim is going to be a long one. But what we already know is that there ain't going to be no Heroes Park on that beach again, if we know this administration. All of that is deception. Deception. I've never come across a more deceptive bunch of people. And how it is they came together like that, it's amazing. It's amazing. Right? That post from Andy Williams was dated September the 28th, 2024. Bush done take over that again. And we didn't see nothing. We didn't see no businesses, no vending, nothing taking place there. And the Bush, it's just, you like this lie overnight, awake, and they think about something they're going to come up with tomorrow. And then they come the next day and they throw something out there like the flyovers and all these beautiful things that's supposed to take place in the South. And we yet to see any of it. In my last episode, the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, told us he was leaving the island on the 9th of January 2025, together with two of his cabinet ministers for a visit to China, two senior ministers. And they were Minister Andel, Joseph Andel, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister Lennox Andrew, Minister for Trade and East Agriculture and a few other things. On that said day, two other ministers left the country for a visit to Venezuela to witness the swearing-in of Maduro. Now, here's what the Prime Minister had to say on that.
Honorable Dennis Cornwell and Senator Adrian Thomas both left the island on Thursday evening to attend the inauguration Friday of President Nicolas Maduro, who will serve a third 6-year term as president of Venezuela. Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell made the pronouncement to the GIS on Thursday prior to his departure to the People's Republic of China. Prime Minister Mitchell says despite the many challenges faced by Venezuela, both countries remain committed and share strong ties to each other through diplomatic relations.
President Maduro has been sworn in. I would have, had it not been for the trip to China, which was already pre-planned, I would have attended. I have not actually made any official visit to Venezuela since I've become Prime Minister of Grenada. As you know, Venezuela has been a very strong supporter and ally of Grenada over the years, particularly in times of need. So because the Foreign Minister and I are attending the event in China, we've asked the Minister for Finance, who is quite fluent in Spanish, to attend on our behalf.
5 ministers of government left the country on the same day, Thursday, the 9th of January, 2025. Same day. 5 ministers of our cabinet, our government, whatever you want to call it. What is instructive about this is that except for Andy Williams' position as acting prime minister, we are yet to be told who are the appointed, or who was, because I think the ones from Venezuela came back already, the appointed acting ministers in place of these other ministers, the ministers that left the country. But we yet to find out who are acting in the case of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Agriculture, who is still away, who is still in China abroad with our Prime Minister. Is it that Minister Andy Williams is the minister for all the 5 persons that travel, the 5 ministers? Where are the other ministers? Again, blatantly ignoring the laws of the land. Accompanying the Prime Minister and his 2 cabinet ministers in China are his Chief of Staff, Teddy St. Louis, his Press Secretary, Nila Avian, his Executive Secretary, Akira Lessie, and his Deputy Press Secretary / photographer. The Senator representing the business community in the Senate, Mr. Senator Salim Rahman, also accompanied them to China. Mr. Richard Nixon, not sure what his portfolio is, some kind of ambassador. We know he was ambassador to China under the previous administration, the NNP administration. He travels with Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell almost always as well. I remember hearing some ambassadorial title given to him in one of their travels when he was being introduced, I believe by the Prime Minister. I stand corrected on that one. I want to think he was in New York, but he was introduced as some kind of ambassador. I try to find it, I can't find it, but I will one day. I will eventually, and I'll let you know. But he is sporting some kind of ambassadorial position as well. That is Mr. Richard Nixon. Now, we have all sorts of ambassadors. We have all sorts of ambassadors. We have a global health ambassador whom we have never heard from since he received his instrument from the Governor General. Global Health Ambassador, Dr. Trevor Lane. Now, he is the uncle of former Minister of Health, Jonathan Lacrette. And the last we saw is here, with him being sworn in.
Dr. Lane, who received his secondary education at the St. David's Catholic Secondary School, studied medicine at the St. George's University and earned his doctorate and graduated at the top of his class. He then moved to the U.S., where he began his career as an oncologist at the Jamaica Hospital in Queens. In his capacity as health ambassador to Grenada, Dr. Lane, who is described as a perfectionist, is now responsible for engaging stakeholders, both regionally and internationally, to assist in the improvement of the healthcare sector.
Healthcare is a top priority for the government of Grenada as we embark upon our transformational agenda. And I'm confident that you will represent us well at the different international organizations and fora. So I now present these to you.
That was Foreign Affairs Minister Joseph Andel. In his acceptance speech, Dr. Lane committed to provide due diligence.
It's heartwarming to me that this government has put healthcare in the forefront, front and center, as compared to other prior administrations. I would do my utmost best to represent Grenada and to bring as much healthcare assets to Grenada as possible in the international organizations, which I do have an idea what goes on there. So thank you very much again. I appreciate it.
Front and center. And according to Global Ambassador Trevor Lane, this government has put it in front in comparison to other administrations. And now that's all they did. It was words. And to me, as far back as I remember, all administrations has put or pledged to put health front and center, right? But this is the worst our health care system has been. Even the Minister of Health admitted that. He also admitted that since he came in, that is Minister Philip Telesford, since he became health minister, he has never spoken to or had any conversation with the global health ambassador. It's like he don't know who he is, really. He has never met him, he never spoke to him, they have never communicated. Can you imagine that? We have a global health ambassador and we have a new minister of health who have never communicated with the minister of health, right? So, by the way, as we on health, we were told that from the 1st of January, our health system will be statutorized. We've heard nothing thus far. We're midway through the month of January, and we don't know whether we statutarize or we privatize or we same way in the dungeons with our health system. Another set of mouth open, words jump out. We have ambassadors for investment and development. That is Miss Andrea St. Bernard, who fits right in with her being an agent for the CBI. Fits right in. So when she travels on behalf of the country for investment and development, we understand what's taking place there. And of course, the Prime Minister made it clear, no one is going to hoodwink him into getting rid of his friends. No one. What has she brought home? We always hear she's in China now as we speak with the Prime Minister. What has she brought home? What has she brought to the table? Where's the bacon? Where is the bacon? We have Ambassador to the Creatives and ICT, Mr. Orlando Rumi, right? We have Ambassador to the Environment, Mr. Kennedy Roberts. Ambassador to the Diaspora, my good friend Terry Forrester, the NDC talk show host. And lately, seen in an article, we now have Ambassador to the Ocean. Ambassador to the Ocean. Just know we're going to have Ambassador to the Rainforest, Ambassador to the Roads, Ambassador to the Rivers. It's sad. It's sad. So the Ambassador to the Ocean is the boyfriend of the Minister for the Environment, Karine James. Her boyfriend that travels with her and the environmental team whenever there are conferences and meetings. He represents us in that group. However, if you look on the screen, you would see him, and he always positions himself right behind her. So once the camera is on her, we can see him there. He's a part of the team. There he is with the Prime Minister. Now, he, however, is paid by the Ministry of Agriculture. Never saw him travel with agriculture. Never heard of him do anything in agriculture. My investigation says he doesn't have a desk in the Ministry of Agriculture. He only shows up in agriculture when his check is late in coming. He goes to the Ministry of Agriculture to find out what's going on. Why is his money late? No. In his contract, he has a contract. And let me just try and pull it up here. And his contract, as I said to you, is with the Ministry of Agriculture. Okay? Let me get my glasses. This one is pretty small. This agreement is made August 9th in the year 2023 between the government of Grenada, represented by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, hereinafter called the government of the one part, and Mr. Germain Enoe of Dr. Bell's Grove in the parish of St. John, hereafter called the contractor, of the other part, collectively the parties. Whereas the government of Grenada has determined that there is a need to procure certain services for its proper functioning. Remember, this is the Ministry of Agriculture this man is being hired under, right? To hide monies, I don't understand. They're crooked, they never do nothing straight and above board. And whereas it has been further represented by the contractor that he is an individual who has the qualifications and the ability to deliver the required services. That is the required services in the Ministry of Agriculture. He's hired under the Ministry of Agriculture. Now it is hereby agreed as follows. Nature of service. Subject to the terms and conditions of this agreement, the government shall engage a contractor to provide the services set out in the terms of reference, Schedule 1 to this agreement, and incorporate herein by this reference, which services may be referred to herein as the services hereunder. Terms of agreement. The engagement of the contractor shall commence on June the 1st, 2023 for a period of 1 year and may be determined by accordance with clause 7 below. So this agreement could be terminated, or as the agreement said, it can be extended. It says the engagement may also be extended beyond the term set out above upon separate written agreement between the parties. So we don't know if it was extended, but it don't need to be. He's now ambassador of the ocean, and he's been traveling with the Ministry of Environment, and so he can continue to do so because this year was a farce. Just to let you know, in consideration for the delivery of the services set out in the schedule, the government shall pay the contractor the sum of EC dollars $61,200 per annum, to be paid at the end of each month for services rendered during the previous month. Now, how much is that per month? I think it's like a $6,000 per month, or within there, some between $5,000 or $6,000 a month. Now, I'm going to go down, and it's a big document. It was a huge document. So I'm going to go now and read to you on page 7. I think it was 11 pages, right? And just to show, it was signed by the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. The contractor further agrees to communicate or cause to be communicated to any other party any confidential information that might have been obtained during the course of execution of this contract, except with the express written content of the government. And so this whole thing was signed and delivered by the permanent secretary acting on the behalf of the government, and that is the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands. And of course, it's a signature I cannot read who that is. And it was also signed and delivered by Mr. Jerry Enoe. And they had, of course, in the presence of a witness. Signed, sealed, and delivered, right? The Ministry of Agriculture. Never went to that ministry, never had a desk, never sat there, never did any work for the Ministry of Agriculture. But he's paid by the Ministry of Agriculture. Don't know if he's paid by the Ministry of Environment. We can't seem to find that one. That one might be hidden. And now he is ambassador to the ocean, right? There's an article about it. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I wouldn't waste time reading it. Just know that Mr. Jerry Enoe is ambassador to the ocean. You can go and read it. Those are those ambassadorial positions: the ocean, the environment, the ICT, the development, ambassador to development. Those are all added to the traditional ones, like the Consul General, Zia Rahman, stationed in Dubai. No, we know, folks, of the earnings of this gentleman, and I want, for those of you who just start to follow, that to let you know that this gentleman has a monthly salary of $17,390. Now I want to, this gentleman has his monthly earnings is $45,110.26. Now, a breakdown of that, he gets an allowance for his kids for school of $9,531, $385. Yeah. And his monthly salary is $17,390 and a rent of $18,188, almost meeting the rent of the Prime Minister, which is $20,500. This is a man who I saw recently speaking about material things that don't matter, it shouldn't matter. But we come to that one day. I played for you one day. I was shocked, my jaw dropped, because the same person that couldn't live up in Sanssouci at Mount Welldale, but can live in Mount Cinnamon, the property, the main house in Mount Cinnamon at the top of the hill with a panoramic view, right? Talking about material things. He alone living in a house costing costing the government and people of Grenada $20,500. No, Mr. Rahman, the Consul General, Zia Azam Rahman, rent in the penthouse in Dubai, $18,188. So the $9,531, $385 allowance. And you have parents, poor people here in Grenada who kids can't go to school because they don't have food to eat or uniform to put on their back or shoes to put in their feet. One man who can afford it, who has all these perks as Consul General, getting allowance, monthly allowance for his children because they have to go to private school, right? Salary, $17,390, my friends, right? So we have the traditional ones, the ambassadors and consul generals. And then we have all these others, all kinds popping up. We might have some more before the NDC leaves office. I'm sure we'd have some more the ambassadors so we can feed the boys and girls. And not that they're hungry, because they all have businesses. Some of them are retired, getting 2 and 3 pensions, and still getting all these offices and getting all these monies. They're on several boards. The nepotism is amazing. It is amazing. What has the Consul General in Dubai brought home to the table? Maybe he has, they just didn't tell us. But so we ask, can you tell us, please? We have not heard, or any of the other ambassadors for that matter. What are they doing? How are they doing? Some of them, I guess, support I don't know how long the ambassadors, they go full time for the term, unless the government decides to change them, I assume. So we need to know, excuse me, we need a follow-up onto what are they bringing home to the table. We have in Trinidad. We've been doing trade with Trinidad ever since, as long as I could remember. Added to the list of high officials in China are, I think, like 3 public officers, right, who was added to this list. Now, when the Prime Minister left for Rwanda, when he got to the UK, he canceled his trip to Rwanda due to a travel advisory issued by the Rwandan government in respect of the outbreak of the Marburg virus. And so he detoured to Nigeria instead to meet up with his good friend Dangote, the richest man in Africa. The event in Rwanda went on with other heads and other government representatives, just not ours. The release was dated October the 11th, 2024, after the fact. After he got busted in Nigeria, then the press secretary put out a release stating that he went to Nigeria instead of Rwanda because of the Marburg virus. Can't have the Prime Minister catching any viruses, okay? The Prime Minister and 2 other cabinet ministers and an entourage, I think is about 9 of them, went to China, left Grenada to China on the 9th of January, knowing, because we've been hearing about this outbreak of this virus, they related closely to the COVID virus since last year, right? They left on the 9th of January, knowing of the new virus outbreak in China. A human metapneumovirus, they call it the HMPV virus, which has the attention of the world. I have to share with you a clip on this virus.
Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Unbuilt Bhattacharya. It has been almost 5 years since the world faced the horrific outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, yet another viral outbreak in China has attracted worldwide attention. The HMPV virus. How dreadful is it? And what threat does the world face this time? Let's connect the dots of the rise of HMPV virus cases. Following the festivities of the New Year, the world woke up to the fears of a new potential pandemic. Yes, you heard that right. Another potential pandemic with the same epicenter as the notorious COVID pandemic, China. Unverified videos of a Chinese hospital became viral across social media platforms with claims that China is reeling under yet another virus outbreak, the HMPV. The videos show huge crowds of people waiting at hospital lobbies amid reports of an uptick in respiratory illnesses throughout China. This was an eerie similarity to the clogging of hospitals during the COVID-19 pandemic. But what is this HMPV virus, which according to the world media is witnessing a surge in China? Human metapneumovirus is a common respiratory virus which causes flu or cold-like symptoms. The US Center for Disease Control and Prevention said this virus is not of new origin and was first discovered in 2001. It belongs to the pneumoviridae family along with respiratory syncytial virus. It generally has cases of outbreaks concentrated during colder seasons, that is winter and early spring months. It is a communicable disease, which means it can spread through the air as well as through touch from an infected person or contaminated surfaces. While the virus may spread through adults, the elderly, young children and immunocompromised people are particularly at a higher risk. These groups of people may face more complicated respiratory problems besides the usual symptoms of the HMPV virus. So what are the symptoms of the HMPV virus? According to the US Center for Disease Control, HMPV causes upper and lower respiratory infections. Common symptoms resemble those of a cold or flu, including cough, runny nose or nasal congestion, sore throat and fever. More severe cases cause wheezing, difficulty in breathing, hoarseness, cough, pneumonia, and in adults, aggravation of asthma. High-risk groups such as young children, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems may face more severe respiratory issues.
There we go. So our Prime Minister left Grenada with a delegation and went to China with the virus, but couldn't go to Rwanda, where there was a virus as well, and where people went, didn't even make that kind of news. Something is not adding up. But we hope that they be careful. I've seen photos of them. If you go on the Prime Minister's page and no mask being worn by any of them, and they just seem to be having a good time out there. I hope when they come back, they're quarantined. That's all I have to say. They should be quarantined, right? Now, we're in January of 2025, and we're yet to hear officially on the Build Back Better housing for any victim of Hurricane Beryl. At the launch of the Build Back Better project on September the 17th, 2024, the minister in charge of Build Back Better, Minister for ICT, Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation, told the gathering that they will deliver by Christmas. This is what he had to say.
And now, Honorable Evan Andrew has committed to complete 50 by the end of the year. And we are committing, PS Clark, yes, and ministry, we are committing to do over 100. I have more in my head, but over 100 by the ending of this year. We have already identified families, and so the ministry has already visited some families in the St. Patrick's area. And I'm proud to announce Minister Cornwall and Mr. Andel just got information. We have signed over 40 contracts already with contractors to build back for folks in St. Patrick's.
Big claps, loud claps, and a roar. Minister for Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs, Stephen and Andrew. 50 houses by the end of the year, and he's speaking of the year 2024 there. Remember, I told you the launch was in September, after they got the money from the supplemental, in September, and the 18th of September to be exact, 2024. 50 for Carriacou, and him and we, and he made it clear from the Ministry of MIT, he called out his first cousin, who is the permanent secretary in his ministry. He called her out and agreed that they would do 100 build back better houses by the end of the year, which is December of 2024. Now, I need my glasses for this one as well. Under vote 29 in the supplementary estimates, if you want to call it budget, the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation and Transformation, Community Mobilization and Empowerment Project number 0114502, $8 million. And that, remember that Andy Williams is the charge of that ministry. This money is going to Andy Williams. $8 million. Hurricane Beryl response, $1.5 million. And the big one, Hurricane Beryl response, $15 million. That $15 million is for the reconstruction of approximately 200 houses on Grenada in the parishes of St. Mark and St. Patrick. $50,000 per house. That's the infamous multiplication and addition and subtraction. $50,000 per house, and this includes labor and material and equipment. That's the cost of a house. $50,000. And they were building 200 houses. And we still want to know what the extra $5 million is for. Because when you multiply 200 by 50,000, we get $10 million. Yeah? 10 million. So Minister Andy Williams got a total of $24.5 million in September. $24.5 million, right? The 1.5 million for hurricane response is to cover the cost of cleanup activities on mainland Grenada and Carriacou and Petit Martinique by the Ministry for MIT. But there are a lot of other monies given for the Hurricane Beryl in that supplemental, Hurricane Beryl relief, they called it, right? So he got that amount of monies. And he said he was going to deliver 100 of those 200 houses by the end of the year. Not one individual has received a Build Back Better house in St. Mark or St. Patrick officially. Not one. Not one. Then the Minister for Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs got $15 million for Hurricane Beryl. And it says in support of rebuilding the economy of Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs, 15 million. And he promised 50 houses by the end of December 2024. Not one. Not one was delivered, right? And of course, there were other monies thrown all over the place from that supplementary budget. It was, I would total up the amount of the burial monies and bring to you another day, right? So, and this is not including the CRIF money, yeah? This does not include the CRIF monies and other monies given to us by other countries, other heads of governments, and all of those. You know, we yet to know. We yet to know. The people needs accountability. The people needs accountability. While I'm at it, we still await the accountability of the money spent on the Unleash program. That's the creative, from the creative desk. We have that was a creative symposium held, and Unleash was held since the 10th of May 2023. Folks, we have no accountability. The money spending, big money, big millions keep calling out from the budget, and the next budget reading another how much millions? 3 million and 5 million to the creative desk. We need to know. We need to know. And I could rope in the CES project or program right there. The CES, we still need to know. We just want one business. One. Tell us one that young people has benefited from, that has been successful, that has just one. We need to know. Out of the millions and the hundreds of persons, mostly NDC supporters, that received monies from the CES project. And now, pension and the new society saving plan. In my last episode, I did establish, by way of clips, that the NDC's 2022 campaign of one public service by regularizing all public workers was deceptive, and that it was an election ploy for votes, and that all indication points to the NDC plans from inception was to gut the 1958 pension plan. Here is the Prime Minister on regularization.
I'm happy that any loans, if affordable, is made available to citizens of Grenada. Mm-hmm. The issue is not whether that's not the issue. The issue is you've placed a large group of Grenadian workers on contract. Mm-hmm. You've placed them in a position where they are unable to borrow through the normal financial institutions by putting them in a position where they do not have sustainable or sustained employment. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that you've made them vulnerable. You put them in a position where you now have to try and create a special lending scheme for them to borrow. And I'm saying even the special lending scheme that you've created, most of them are not going to qualify for the loan. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to qualify because you've already placed them in a position to disqualify them. Because they would not have acquired land. They would not have life insurance because they're working on 6 months or 12-month contracts. And if they're working, and if the jobs they are doing are permanent jobs, jobs that are normal customer requirements for the government, they should be indefinite employees or permanent employees. They should not be on contract work. And if they're not on contract work, they will be able to take part, like the rest of the persons who are on permanent jobs, in the normal banking and financial and the credit union systems in Grenada. Right. And that is how you create wealth. Absolutely. That is how you sustain and raise your standard of living. That is how you're able to save money. That is how you acquire a home or acquire a piece of land, or you're able to start a small business on the side. But when you put people on contract work, and when there is no need to do so, then you are putting them in a vulnerable position, and you are doing so deliberately. And so the question you have to ask is, why are you doing so?
Yep.
And in my view, you are doing so because you want to have the ability to fire them at will. So you want to create job insecurity because you want to be able to manipulate them for your own ulterior reasons.
Right.
Right? So let's make this clear. For those contract workers who are able to qualify for that GDP loan, I'm happy for them. But a significant number of them will not be able to qualify.
Right.
And the question is, when they don't qualify, what happens to them? They remain on contract work. So what has to be addressed is the fact that the government has to end this contract work, absorb the employees because they are doing jobs that are normal, customary, and required. Let's take, for example, a cook in a school. If you have a school feeding program, that job is required indefinitely. There is no reason to put a cook on a contract work.
Right.
And remember, when you put her on contract work, she has no pension. She has no chance of getting health insurance. She has no chance of buying life insurance because the incomes are very low.
Yep.
Right. And if you go to buy these things, they will say to you, well, we have no guarantee that you will have a job 6 months from now or 12 months from now. And so no one wants to deal with you from a financial perspective when you're in that position.
Right.
And I'm saying the job of the citizens, of the government, is to fight for its citizens, to protect its citizens, to encourage its citizens to be independent, not dependent,
Right.
not vulnerable. So that is the challenge we face. And I'm saying it is solvable by the stroke of a pen.
Yep.
And let me make this further point. It is actually illegal. The Employment Act clearly says that you cannot put someone on a fixed term contract, meaning these short term contracts, when the position they are filling is an indefinite one. So the government itself is breaking the law. The government itself is being lawless.
Oh, didn't see we diaspora ambassadors sit on the high and dry in a political program hosting the NDC's party heartbeat program. Our diaspora ambassador, that we as a people, whether it's red, green, yellow, or blue in color, the nation, the people, the government and people of Grenada is paying this gentleman to host NDC political parties program. And we yet to have him tell us anything concerning the diaspora, what is going on there. Well, when he goes to the diaspora, he goes to the diaspora with the NDC party. Yeah. That's what we have to deal with in this country here. So the Prime Minister said that they were going to put an end to contract work and absorb these people that is contract work, these workers, into the system, the public service system. Because remember, we were to have one public service, according to the Prime Minister and the soldiers. One public service. Therefore, when they get absorbed into the system, they would be paid, they would be under the PSC, under the Public Service Commission, right? They would be permanent workers, and therefore pension, and be a part of the 1958 pension plan, right? So they kept them, although it's illegal, you heard him, and although it could be fixed by the stroke of a pen, they're keeping these workers as temporary workers. What they said with temporary workers, you could fire them when you want, right? They're keeping them as temporary workers. The new society savings plan doesn't mean you're permanent. They set up that plan especially for you. That is if you make it through to retirement. But remember, if you're temporary, they could fire you when they want as well. He said so. So they kept them as temporary workers and offering them this new plan. Because if they come with one public service and regularize all of them, end contract work, strong statements were made, then they would have to pay them under the 1958 plan, which they don't want to do, but which they had campaigned on, Now, as I was saying, they have since exposed themselves to the fact that it was their plan all along to gut the 1958 pension plan. And it was exposed by Cynthia Daughter, our Attorney General. Unless you forget, here's what she had to say.
Pensions, right? We were able to resolve the issue of outstanding retroactive pensions and gratuity to public workers, and to clarify that the public workers who are already established, their pension has been restored. So when they retire, they will get their pension and retirement benefits under the existing 1958 Pension Act.
Yes.
And we were able to work hard. We started immediately on assuming office. So this is actually not just 2024 achievement. It culminated here in 2024, but we started work immediately on coming into office in October 2022, set up a pension review committee, knowing that for some workers, while we restored pension for some, there was almost 4,000 more who were not eligible to a pension, and we had to treat with them because we recognize the inequity with having workers serving the country side by side as co-workers, and one has an automatic pension and the other doesn't. So only this week we passed in the Parliament the Public Sector Employees Pension Fund Bill, which will bring into force in January 2025 pension for the rest of public workers who were not ordinarily entitled to a pension. And so all of the public sector now will be.
So what Cynthia Daughter did not say there is that these are the people, they again are going to repeat it, they promised to regularize these 4,000. The promise was they would regularize them, making one public service. So don't act as though you're doing something great. You did not fulfill your promise. The promise was to regularize them, make one public service. And you knew going into that they did not have pension for the for those people, those persons. You knew that. And that was the whole idea. That was the whole idea. So how it is, and you say there, from the very beginning, right after coming into office, you all started this plan of keeping them on contract because they're still on contract. You started that plan from October, 2 months after you came into office. Election was in July 2022. 2 months. Let's hear her as she continued.
You know, and the beauty about that pension fund is that it is intended to extend to statutory bodies. Yes. Already statutory bodies are provided for under it as now constructed, and the intention is to extend it to the private sector. So in future, our vision is that this would be the basis for a national pension fund. So no more in Grenada. Between that fund and the NIS and the people who are presently covered under the existing public sector pension scheme, no more in Grenada will we ever have our workers retiring into poverty, retiring and not being able to make ends meet because what they're getting on retirement is so much less than their last salary. So what are we doing? Building and reconstructing a strong middle class, because it's a strong middle class that holds a society together.
Yeah, those are
so we are so proud of that.
Yes,
To my mind, this is as big as the international airport.
All right. Bringing in the private sector and statutory bodies. Okay, statutory bodies are part of the government. The government under the government of Grenada, subsidiaries of the government. The private sector, we have national insurance. We have the national insurance scheme, not so? And the workers contribute and the government contributes. Not the government, but the employer contributes. Well, the government in the case of the public workers, yeah. But the employer in the private sector contributes. The employer contributes more than the workers do when it comes to NIS, except for this new society plan where the government matching it, 3% and 3%. Now, we complained that the NIS was measly, right? And it started to rise every few months, you had to pay more. And this one is also a contributory society plan. So the workers, more money has to be deducted from the workers' monies as well. So we could get 2 pension plans, I guess. That's what you say. So they're going to get 2 pension plans now instead of 1, because the private sector, we go home with NIS as our pension, right? And we contribute to it. One public service, they said. Now the plan of this administration, this NDC administration, the Deacon Mitchell-led NDC administration that's in office now, their plan is to phase out the existing 1958 pension plan and eventually have all workers on this society savings plan. They were forced to go to Parliament to pass their SUSU society plan. Why? Because they can't afford to pay all public workers through the existing pension plan that they had promised. So they promised to regularize. Then, of course, once you regularize and you're permanent, you would be on the 1958 plan. They can't afford it. And they were warned about it. But they can do it because, they're bright. They can do everything. And now they back in on their plan. Now, here is what Dr. Colin Gilchrist, chairman of the Pension Review Committee, had to say on the phasing out.
The fundamental disagreement here, as perhaps being articulated by the union, is the idea that this particular scheme sort of resembles the Pension Disqualification Act that we had back during the revolution. And that here you have a situation again where you're having 2 different types of pension schemes, while at the same time you have a situation where government, yes, they're attempting to regularize those contract employees as well.
Yes, but let me quickly jump in. But remember, you only have 2 schemes initially.
Yes.
Going forward, you'll have the 2 pension schemes, right? But going forward, new entrants into the public service would be assigned to the new scheme. So eventually, maybe over about 50 years or so, you would not have any employees under the existence of the current pension scheme.
You mean the non-contributory pension scheme?
Yeah,
the non-contributory one. Okay.
Because what would happen is that anybody being employed would fall under the new pension scheme.
So he's saying there that anybody being employed into the government service, permanent or not, I assume, because he didn't specify, will be paid under the new society plan, and no longer by the 1958 pension plan. He said that would phase out. That would phase out. So let's take a look at this new pension savings scheme, pun intended. A real scheme, in the true meaning of the word. A scheme is a plan or program of action, especially one that is secret or crafty. Let us first look at its fiscal implication. It all started during the 2022 campaign, after the court ruled in favor of the workers, citing they must be paid their pension under the 1958 Pension Plan Act, as stipulated in the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. Now, any party winning the June 23rd, 2020 election would have had to abide by that law and pay the pensioners. And back then, the NNP, the incumbent at the time, started to work on the way forward. They clearly stated that they were not going to appeal the ruling and had put a committee in place after committing to pay the pension. But they needed a plan to guide them through, because they, as the Prime Minister had said in more than one instance, that the country cannot withstand payment of pension and gratuity, the back paying, and to continue, because it's not a one-off. Remember, you have to pay pensioners every month. The gratuity is a one-off. But remember, the pension payment is every month you pay. And he stated that our fiscal space did not or will not allow us to do that. But no, the Bright Boys know better, and they could do it. However, in an effort to hoodwink the public workers, the teachers, the police officers, all who fall under the PSC, the NDC dropped the appeal idea that they had in mind, and they cannot doubt that they had the appeal. They even said that the NNP was weak. Yeah, they said that the NNP was weak and coward when they came out earlier and said they're not going to appeal. But in an effort to win votes, they dropped their whole plan and they jumped on the bandwagon. They no appeal, and they jumped on the bandwagon of paying the pension. Yeah, y'all want to know? I know. Ask the drones. Oh, I know. Ask the drones that was flying out there. Oh, I know that NDC had planned, if they were enough, they were going to appeal the case. As the drones, they could tell all that. And so the trained corporate lawyer dipped into the consolidated funds and paid out millions. In fact, $75 million retroactive to 525 persons. One go. And then a 1.2 million salaries to the teachers who got paid for not working. All of what was owed was paid off. All of it. Show off, man. Show off. Just so they can say, promise made, promise kept. And now they are running, we as a country, running on a deficit. The last one we were told $144 million deficit, as stated in their last publication of the midterm review 2024. And that is the reason they are struggling these days to pay salaries every month. Can't meet their own minimum wage increase. The legislation passed. The government of Grenada have workers who are not being paid the minimum wage as legislated by them in the Parliament of Grenada. If you have $100,000 in the bank and you want to buy a car, and the car costs, the one you want, what you like, costs $100,000, that's what you want. Would you take all of your money in the bank and purchase the car? No, you wouldn't. No, you won't. You put down the deposit, whatever the bank asks for, and you get the bank give you the money, and you pay monthly for your car. But no, they went in there, they saw the money in our coffers, and they decided, hey, I thought they said they didn't have money. Because remember, the Prime Minister had promised on the campaign trail, if he had to borrow money to pay the pensioners, he will do it. But he met money there, so he didn't need to do that. The court nor the unions never demanded immediate or full payment to the workers' owed. Never did. They said we must pay the pension. They didn't say we have to pay them all at once. The unions never asked for that as well. In fact, the union was willing to sit and discuss a payment plan with the government. And in fact stated, or started doing so rather, in an MOU agreed and signed on the 6th of March 2018, Memorandum of Understanding between the government of Grenada and the Public Workers Union. Memorandum of Understanding. On the restoration and reform of pension for public officers of the Grenada Public Service, which shall form an addendum to the Memorandum of Understanding, which was executed on February 18, 2018, with the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, Grenada Union of Teachers, Royal Grenada Police Force Gazetted Officers Association, Royal Grenada Police Force Welfare Association, and Her Majesty's Prison Association. And this agreement has witnessed the hands of the parties hereafter on the duly authorized agents the day and year first written, agreed and signed to the 6th day of March in the year 2018, signed for and on behalf of the government of Grenada, Ms. Beryl Isaac, the Cabinet Secretary and Chairman of the Government Pension Engagement Committee at the time, Anna Brizan, the Permanent Secretary, Department of Public Administration, DPA, and a member of Government Pension Engagement Committee, and signed for and on behalf of the Public Workers Union, Rachel Roberts, President of the Public Workers Union, witnessed by Cyrus Griffith, the Labor Commissioner. And it says here, in the page 4 of the MOU, This phase, let me get my glasses. This phase covers two categories of public officers, employees as detailed below. One, public officers who will commence employment with government with effect from January 1st, 2019. Employees under the unestablished category, right? That's the 4,000 that they speak of now. Phase 2, principles. 1, the parties commit to the design of a contributory pension scheme for qualifying public officers in established posts who will commence employment from January 1st, 2019, the details of which would have to be developed and mutually agreed upon by both parties, right? They had to sit with the union to develop the same, well, not the same, a plan, right? For these 4,000 people that they speak of. But no, this was done since in 2018. They came in 22 and said that they would regularize everybody. So in other words, there'd be no need for this plan, right? Or to sit with the union to put together a plan. As it pertains to employees under the unestablished category, both parties agreed to review the existing regime as applicable and to design a scheme that will afford technical benefits to these officers and employees. The parties also agreed to give focused attention to these categories of officers and employees. We're talking about the parties, the unions, and the government of Grenada. The start date of the new scheme shall be based on the availability of the finances to fund the scheme and will be subject to discussion with the union. Never did. They never did. They went on their own and created this society saving scheme. So we see here, and as the opposition and the unions have said, they do not oppose the so-called unestablished workers getting a pension, right? And how it come about, like organizing a special scheme, a special pension plan, together with the union, right? Also, the Constitution allows for that to happen, for any government could come up with a new plan. But it also states that the worker has the right to choose which plan they want to fall under. Not being bullied into a specific plan. But of course, we know our administration, our government, they love to close the stable after the horse down the road galloping, right? And so our prime minister, after they passed the plan in the parliament, the ayes had it, sent out a letter to the public workers, inviting them to a meeting to discuss the plan. And it says, notice to unestablished public officers, Prime Minister to host special meeting with unestablished public workers. The 7th of January, 2024, Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell, through the Department of Public Administration, would convene a special meeting with the unestablished public officers on Wednesday, January 8th, 2025, at the Trade Center Annex from 1:30 p.m. This meeting is to provide an update on the Public Sector Employees Pension Fund, Bill 2024, which was passed in both houses of Parliament in December 2024 and duly assented to by the Governor General, Her Excellency Dame Cecile Lagrenade, and all the letters that comes with it, GCMGOBE PhD DSC. Listen, I swear, when as I read this here and see all the persons, the NDC people that receiving letters from the Queen, I swear if the NDC stay in office any longer, we wouldn't have an alphabet when they finish. But however, they call this meeting, right, after the fact. Now the World Bank, and the Prime Minister said it was well attended. Yeah, if you send letters during work time to workers to come out to a meeting, and of course they need to know their fate, they will show up. They will show up. And they did show up. They did show up. The World Bank, the IMF, and the ECCB were already being engaged by the previous administration, the incumbent at the time, for help. And of course, there was the committee formed by the Prime Minister, headed by economist Dr. Patrick Antoine, and the economic advisor for CARICOM heads, to advise the government on the way forward with the pension, the payments of the pension. Things were being done. You know, NEC, they don't really know that we need to put things in, like have a plan, have structure in place to do things. They don't understand that yet. They haven't gotten to that place yet where you have a plan. Today, we don't know their plan. They don't have one. They don't have a structure. They just go in peck-a-mel. Anything, anywhere, anyhow. Anybody doing anything. Anybody dipping in the funds. Everybody just having a good time. Ring a roses. Everybody just have a good time. Right? All of that was put in place. And as far as I understand it, well on their way to organizing proper payments, structured payments. And so we wouldn't be scrambling now as we are. And the sad part is when you don't know that you don't know. And that is this NDC administration. So, you know, I wondered if there was a term for people who don't know that they don't know. So I asked Google, and you know Google know everything. What do you know? Google had an explanation. So I said, what do you call a person who thinks they know everything, but doesn't know that he doesn't know? And Google said, someone who appears knowledgeable at first glance might just be narcissistic, or a person with mental health issues, like a compulsive liar. Now, a narcissist personality disorder, which is called NDP, is a mental health condition that causes people to have an inflated sense of self-importance and excessive need for admiration. Now, bear with me. Just bear with me here, because I myself was amazed at the similarities. Call name, I go whistle. So they went on, describing a narcissist. Self-importance. Narcissists have an exaggerated sense of their own importance and may believe they are special or unique. They may also have fantasies about success, power, or intelligence. Lack of empathy. Narcissists may have difficulty understanding or caring about the feelings of others. They may say things, hurt others, or see others' feelings as a sign of weakness. The need for admiration. Narcissists need constant admiration from others and may be preoccupied with knowing what others think of them. Entitlement. Narcissists may have an inflated sense of self-worth and expect favorable treatment. They may become angry when people don't cater to them. Exploitative. Narcissists may exploit others for their own gain. They may form relationships with people who boost their self-esteem or status and then drop them by the wayside. I put that in there. Arrogant. Narcissists may be arrogant and haughty in their behaviors and attitudes. Envy. Narcissists may be envious of others, especially when others are successful. They may also believe that others are envious of them. People with NPD may display these behaviors in all areas of their life, including work, friendship, family, and love relationships. Call name. I go whistle. Let me see if I could whistle because I know y'all calling the right name. I whistle. For example, let's take a look at this clip.
So as the Prime Minister of the country, it is my job to be the chief advocate for the beautiful tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And the only way to do that is to leverage me and the office of the Prime Minister to ensure that we can get investors, we can get people interested and talking about Grenada. So with all due respect to the Grenada Tourism Authority and all the advertising, I am the biggest seller of Grenada. So when I go to Nigeria, I'm representing Grenada. Nigerians who never heard of Grenada would have heard of me as the Prime Minister. They would have recognized that I met with perhaps one of the most, if not the most influential person, not just in Nigeria, in Africa, in the black world. And the attention that has brought to Grenada is what you will see following therefrom.
Thank you for bearing with me. I had to segue there into that. I couldn't, when I asked Google and I saw, I could not share this with you. But let's move on. So a new structure was formed for the unestablished workers. A new fancy word we're now calling the contract workers or the unregularized workers. A huge structure dubbed a board of trustees with high-paying jobs. Yeah, we know it's high-paying. Because listen, we're forming another national insurance scheme there. It's basically the same structure, but of course the national insurance scheme just have more benefits, right? The leader of government business in the Senate, Adrian Persuader Thomas, refused to tell us the salary. When he got to the salary, he said he'll bypass that. This is him in the Senate.
This part
speaks about a board of trustees. Very important. It's not a question where the government will be managing and taking charge, but a board of trustees, Madam President, will be responsible for the management and administration of the funds. And how do we go about selecting, Madam President, this board of trustees? This bill, Madam President, will ensure that there's no wrong pegs in square holes or square pegs in wrong holes. This bill, Madam President, will ensure that we get the best minds to look after and to manage the funds. And so, there is a clause, Madam President, in this part of the bill that speaks about eligibility requirements for appointment as a trustee. Very detailed. Also, Madam President, it speaks to the tenure of the people appointed. They will not be appointed for life, as we have seen in some institutions. This bill, Madam President, speaks of 3 years. However, if you have a lot in you to offer to this country, you can continue. But one of the things we will ensure also, Madam President, is that persons appointed, would not all move out the same time, because we want continuation. We're going to stagger it, Madam President. And we also make provisions for the filling of vacancies. Every Monday morning, somebody resigned from some institution. So the bill speaks to filling of vacancies in cases of resignation or revocation of appointments. I will not go into details, Madam President, in regards to the appointment, the protection for liability, salaries for the and fees for the members of the trustees. But Madam President, the function of the board of trustees.
So he ain't bothering, he not going into the fees and the payments and the salaries, and he ain't going into that. But I need to draw your attention to the fact that the National Insurance Scheme employs hundreds of workers. I'm sure in excess of 100 workers. So let me not say hundreds, but I'm sure in excess of 100 workers to run the scheme. They're speaking of a trustee, right? To run a scheme like the National Insurance Scheme. Only to implement, just to implement bi-monthly payments to workers, for the salary payments to workers. The whole thing messed up. It took them, I don't know if they sorted out now, but it was months before when they tried their best to sort it out, right? Just to do that. They now implemented a new pension scheme, and they going to just have a trustee, a board of trustees to look over and to pay the pensioners, right? To pay pensioners. So this new scheme is formed. Granted, we already have two structures in place. The National Insurance Scheme, and which is a contributory pension, compulsory contributory pension scheme, and the 1958 Public Service Pension Plan, a non-contributory plan. This new savings scheme, also a compulsory contributory scheme. Rather, more monies deducted from workers' salary. In other words, now I can tell you, and I know it for a fact, I was an employer. If the NIS was not compulsory, I want to bet you that more persons would have opted out of paying their contribution towards their pension through NIS. I had workers telling me, asking me if they must pay the NIS. That whatever little was taken out then, and by then I think that's when it started off at 3 or 4%. They did not want that removed from their salary. So now you come with a next deduction for a second compulsory contributory scheme. On retirement, whatever you contribute, and we're talking now about this SUSU, the society scheme there. On retirement, whatever your contributions are, is what you would receive. And when your money done, pension payments done. I have not heard the government in any of their deliberations tell that to the workers. On retirement, on retiring, you receive 25% of your total as a lump sum. And you can call that gratuity if you want. They didn't call it, but you can call that gratuity. And the rest you draw down, whatever you draw down, when that amount is done, it's done. You had to pray you die before that happens. Whereas the two other structures in place, the NIS and the 1958 plan, allows for that. You get in your pension monthly until you die. So these workers who are public workers, according to law, covered under Section 92 of the Constitution, Part 4, pensions law and protection of pension rights, that is Section 92. Subsection 1 reads, the law to be applied with respect to any pension benefits that were granted to any persons before this section comes into operation shall, and let me tell you, shall is a very important word in law, and shall means compulsory. So anytime you hear shall, it is compulsory, it must happen. Shall be the law that was enforced, the date on which those benefits were granted, or any law enforced at a later date that is not less favorable to that person. Subsection 2 And you can go online and read up section 92 on your own timing. So you can, because you know these legal things, so you can sit and try and understand exactly what they're saying. Subsection 2, the law to be applied with respect to any pension benefits not being benefits to which subsection 1 of this section applies, shall, insofar as those benefits are wholly in respect of a period of service as a judge or public officer that commenced before the date upon which this section comes into operation, be the law that was enforced on the date upon this section comes into operation, and B, in so far as those benefits are wholly and partly in respect of a period of service as a judge or public officer that commenced after this section comes into operation, be the law enforced on the date on which that period of service commenced, or any law enforced at a later date that is not less favorable to that pension. So the pensioner has the right to choose which pension is favorable to them, which is more favorable. Subsection 3, where a person is entitled to exercise an option as to which of the two or more laws shall apply in his case, the law for which he opts shall for the purpose of this section be deemed to be more favorable to him than the other law or laws. It continues to say in subsection 4, all pension benefits shall, except to the extent that they are charged upon and duly paid out of some other fund, should be a charge on the consolidated fund. No, the consolidated fund is where the public servants, the public workers' pension should be paid from. The consolidated, all of it. That is the law. The Prime Minister himself, I heard him called the unestablished public workers. They might be unestablished, but they're public workers. According to law, they're public workers. And therefore, in my understanding of that, they should be paid. And not just my understanding, we come to legal understandings just now. They should be paid under the 1958 pension plan. Subsection 5. In this section, pensions benefits means any person, compensation, gratuity, or other like allowances of for persons in respect to their service as judges or public officers, or for the widows, children, dependents, or personal representatives, right? Or personal representatives of such pensions in respect of such service. I heard the Prime Minister say over this whole pension thing that they didn't tell all him that that this new pension would be paying pensioners if they die, the estate, in other words, would continue to receive their pensions, as if to say that the 1958 pension plan doesn't. I've just read it for you. That is subsection 5 of section 92. The supreme law of the land, our constitution, clearly states that pension benefits means any pension, compensation, gratuities, or other like allowances to persons in respect of their service includes the widows, children, dependents, or personal representatives of such person in respect of such service. In other words, their estate will continue to receive their pension. Something is wrong with that guy. The Constitution clearly states that one's estate benefits from their pension in case of death. It is clear the Prime Minister doesn't have time to run the country. He has not had the time to settle down long enough on the ground to run the country. Now, while here in transit, because Grenada is where he's being in transit, most time, for no more than 5 days, he makes sure he goes to St. David's, film a movie, as well. Let me show you one of the latest ones. As soon as you land, you go to St. David and you film a movie. Or sometimes he manages to slip in a press conference or an interview in one of the media centers, or if not all, one he goes to. And then he gone again. To date, the Prime Minister spent only 3 days on island in this new year, 2025. 3. And the acting Prime Minister, Andy Williams, spent 13 days thus far as Prime Minister. Still, right now as we speak, is the acting Prime Minister. 13 days, while the Prime Minister spent 3 days on island. He don't even know the laws of the land. He don't care to know the laws of the land, if you ask me. So then why speak on it? And with conviction. It's either he has not read the Constitution, or it's just downright deceptive and a compulsive liar. I'll stop with the subsections here for section 92. It's like you get the gist of what it said about the workers. As I said, you can go online and access the Constitution and read up on it on your own. The government has a charge, an obligation to pay workers from the consolidated fund. Pension is based on one's service and not their contribution. Now, here's a clip from Jimmy Bristol, attorney Jimmy Bristol, KC, who is the attorney for the Public Workers Union on Section 92.
Particular bill chalk up or compare, and before we get into the weeds, as I said, in relation to the specific issues, the specific bones of contention here, how does this one chalk up to the other issues you've dealt with in the past?
Well, first, I want to address Dr. Gilchrist. Now, I notice he's an economist. Money can never trounce and trump and overtake and subsume constitutional rights. And that seems to be the talk. What it's going to cost, and it's going to cost, especially when it comes to these so-called contract workers. I say so-called because that's what it is. Now, on the consultation, from my perspective, because my perspective is a little different, the PWs, they're interested in the mechanics and of the scheme and how it works. I'm interested primarily in the legal aspect of it. And I just like to say, there's no consultation really required from anyone, really required as to the legal aspects, because the Constitution is there. Section 92, which is the pension rights, is there. And the several enactments are there. We all know that. And all the government had to do is to give effect to those bits of legislation. So even if, and I wouldn't think that the union will have too much to do with the constitutional aspect, except insofar as it concerns these so-called contract workers. Now, I know, and I only received a copy of the bill, I don't know, less than 14 days ago. It was sent to the Bar Association. And that, if they were seeking consultation, when it was ready to be tabled before Parliament, it's impossible for there to be any meaningful input by the Bar Association within that time. So I think that the notion of consultation is illusory and is a figment of someone's imagination. So I'd like, my concern with this, given my, from my experience, don't forget, I'm the one who did the case that resulted in the public workers obtaining their pension rights and being paid their pension. And so I'm quite familiar with the issue and with the constitutional issue. Now, and so in that regard, what bothers me really, apart from some very pathetic drafting in this bill, which leaves a lot to be desired, but the real nitty-gritty is Section 3 of the bill, and really who gets what based on Section 3. And that is because it refers to contract workers in several of the subsections, and it's not clear, and there are contradictory sections, subsections within Section 3. So it's not at all clear who's governed by the Act and what is the position with these so-called contract workers who are there at the moment, and what would their rights be, whether they fall under the existing pension legislation or they would go under the proposed legislation. So that's a very important matter because it deals with the Constitution.
Indeed it does. Indeed it does. Folks, it seems like we are operating with a suspended constitution. Just not yet in black and white like it was during the revolution. But all indications suggest that we are. operating on a suspended constitution. Here is Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell on Beyond the Headlines a few days ago.
And that's why I want to talk about the reality. And I want to say that to our citizens. There are a lot of people who will tell you about constitution and constitutionality and all kind of stories. You have to ask yourself, if you're one of the 4,500 plus persons who don't have a pension and who not had one, where these people were over the last 10 years? Where were the advocacy for you? What did they do to highlight the situation or to try and solve the problem? I want to make it clear. This isn't costing this administration anything. Understand this. We are trying to give you something that you don't have in a sustainable manner that is yours. All of those who talk about constitution and constitutionality, they have theirs already. 10 times over. And they have never sought to give you anything. So for me, this is not an issue about constitutionality. We are satisfied, having worked with consultants, having worked with the Attorney General's chambers, that there is nothing unconstitutional about the bill. The bill is not taking away anybody's rights. As I've said, the bill explicitly repeals the Pension Disqualification Act. The only people who have any right to a pension right now are these established public officers who are currently working. So a teacher who ain't working with the government 5 years from now has no rights.
Right. A teacher who's hired tomorrow.
Yes.
What is the regime they come under?
They will come under the new pension regime. Right. And therefore, this whole notion of established and non-established workers is a notion that ultimately, I'm going to use this word, will no longer be of any distinction with a meaning. Because to a large extent, the single almost defining act of this is these pension issues.
And then the other question is, who does the hiring? Is it Government of Grenada or would it be Public Service Commission? That new teacher being hired tomorrow.
Well, I would simply say the Government of Grenada. At the end of the day, all employees really and truly work for the Government of Grenada. The Public Service Commission is a commission or a mechanism that was created as part of the Constitution. I'm going to use this word in layman terms to give some buffer to how you protect public officers from arbitrariness or political arbitrariness and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, the Public Service Commission doesn't pay you. Right? The Public Service Commission, I will use this word, is a more disciplinarian, hiring, firing, promoting, etc. But they're not your employer. It's the taxpayers of Grenada who pay you, and it's the government of Grenada who's employed you. Right? And we need to be careful that people don't tie us up into a lot of language issues that isn't dealing with the stark reality of what you're facing.
This clip is a very interesting piece. The Prime Minister did a lot of damage in that clip. He trivialized the Constitution. He scrapped the PSC. He called the whole pension plan a notion. He did a lot of damage in that clip. The Prime Minister was saying basically that the public service, the PSC, is of no use. The government only hires contract workers. So if he's saying, or the PSC rather, so if he's saying that all workers from here on will be hired by the government, would they be hired on contract or not? Because if the Public Service Commission, the PSC, that hires public officers and that makes them permanent, has no use anymore, then it's either the government from here on would be hiring all workers temporary, or if they are hiring them permanent, then there's no need for the society scheme. Oh, how we're in a tangled web. The Public Service Commission is a creature of the Constitution. It's not just a buffer, as the PM alluded to. It's a creature of the Constitution. Is Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell saying he will be bypassing the PSC and legitimizing contract work? We need to know what's it here, Prime Minister? You see, it's the contract workers. They are now bullying to join this new pension, this new SUSU, Society Scheme Savings Plan. Even though, according to the Constitution, the government do have the right to construct any amount of new plans. The workers also have the right, as I said before. And their right is to choose which plan fits them best, not be bullied or forced into a new SUSU society plan. Now, Section 26 of the Constitution, subsection 1, states, in each fiscal year, every proposed legislation submitted for approval by Parliament shall, remember what the word shall means in law? It's compulsory, shall be accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis stating the proposed legislation's estimated effect on revenues and expenditures. Now, this is very important. And that is where that bill that was passed in the Parliament of Grenada is null and void, is illegal. Section 26 of the Constitution, subsection 1 states, in each fiscal year, every proposed legislation submitted for approval by Parliament shall be accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis stating the proposed legislation's estimated effect on revenues and expenditures, and that was not done. The Prime Minister went to Parliament, and Minister of Finance went to Parliament, passed a bill without the fiscal impact study done or presented for the fiscal year in which the legislation would become effective, as well as the legislation's fiscal impact on multi-year planning and budgeting. And that was not done. They did not have that accompanying the bill in the Parliament. The Constitution states clearly in Section 26 that should happen, and it did not happen. Subsection 2 of Section 26, the minister shall prepare detailed instructions regarding the nature of the analysis to be done and the process of validating the fiscal impact. That's the Minister of Finance. Subsection 3, the minister shall provide an opinion to Parliament on the adequacy of such fiscal impact analysis. There was none. There was no fiscal impact analysis. The bill is a money bill, and therefore the proposed legislation submitted for approval by the Parliament shall be accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis. Was that done? The answer is no. It was not. And therefore, the bill should be null and void. A clear case of going against the supreme law of the land. Did they pass a structure of their new pension plan? In other words, have the workers who are contemplating this new pension plan been presented with simple data regarding the exact amount they would receive? Did we hear that in the bill at any point in time? Telling the workers, your salary is X amount. If your salary is X amount, this is what your pension will be. Where are the numbers, the data to show what persons, what the workers will receive as pension, their monthly pension? Now, Section 26 of the Constitution is not obeyed, but it's not the only section of the law ignored or broken by this administration. I have to say that we are really out of time again this week, but we would continue this pension because it gets better in the back. It gets better as we go along. We will continue this pension plan saga in our next episode as well. So as we wrap up, I need to say this to the Prime Minister, the head of the National Organizing Committee, Ms. Wendy Crawford, the director, the creative director, Mr. Orlando Romain, anybody who can help us here, anyone, the Minister of Finance. Please tell us the cost of the drone display. Please give us answers, accountability on the spending of the $22.5 million. We need to know. We need to know. And as I close, I want to remind the Prime Minister, we await the investigation on the National Lottery Authority and the continued rape of that entity coming from the chairman of the board, Mr. William Batiste, and his girlfriend, his lover, who is the managing director of the authority, Ms. Cindy Henry. We await that. The workers await that. The workers are worried that they would lose the authority, that they would have a job at some point if this continued abuse of the financial resources of the authority continues. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. It's always a pleasure conversing with you, keeping them honest, at least trying to keep them honest. It's not working. It's not working. But we continue to try to keep them honest. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week. Same time, same place. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says.
To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.